The sun rose over Ornan, casting soft golden light across the ruins. The human crew went about their usual tasks, but Miran's attention was elsewhere. Today was different, after months of study, of learning from the archive and from Fallon. A sense of change hung in the air. The chamber of crystals glimmered softly in the morning light. Fallon stood in the center, his tall figure outlined by the glow of floating orbs. He moved slowly, touching each crystal lightly, as if saying farewell. Miran entered quietly, feeling a mix of excitement and concern. "Fallon," he said gently, "are you ready?" The alien scholar paused and turned to him. His dark eyes were thoughtful, almost somber. "I am," he said quietly. "The archive is stable. The knowledge is preserved. And now, I am ready to leave it behind." Miran blinked in surprise. "Leave? But this place is your home. You've guarded it for centuries." Fallon nodded. "Yes, I have guarded it alone, keeping the memory of my people alive. But solitude has its price. I have learned much from you, human. You have shown me patience, respect, and trust, and in return, I have learned that knowledge alone is not enough. It must be shared, guided, and sometimes carried together." Miran stepped closer. "You mean we can go together?" The alien scholar's expression softened. "Yes, together. You have earned more than understanding, you have earned companionship. Perhaps this is the beginning of a new path for both of us." Miran felt a thrill of excitement. "Then let's do it. Let's explore the stars together. There is so much we can learn, and so much we can share." Fallon studied him for a long moment, his eyes reflecting the floating orbs. "Very well," he said at last, "but know this, human, the universe is vast, and the journey will be difficult. We will face dangers, unknown civilizations, and challenges that will test our minds and our trust." Miran nodded firmly. I am ready, and I trust you, Fallon. You've taught me much, and I've learned to trust not only your guidance but your judgment." For the first time in centuries, Fallon allowed a small, genuine smile to cross his face. "Then we begin." They spent the next hours preparing. Fallon shared instructions for navigating ancient star paths, teaching Miran how to read the glowing maps and use the technology left behind by his people. The human crew assisted with equipment, but it was clear that the bond between Miran and Fallon was unique, built through months of shared discovery and trust. As evening approached, they stood at the edge of the ruins, looking at the sleek human vessel that would carry them beyond Ornan. The stars began to appear, glittering like distant beacons in the darkening sky. Fallon turned to Miran. "Are you certain, human? Once we leave, there is no turning back. The archive will remain here, and our path will be among the stars, uncertain and uncharted." Miran smiled with determination. "I am certain. We've protected the past. Now it's time to create the future." The alien scholar studied him, the golden light of the horizon reflecting in his dark eyes. Slowly, he extended his hand. "Then take it," he said. Together, Miran took Fallon's hand firmly, feeling the familiar ridges of the alien's skin beneath his fingers. This simple touch carried more meaning than words could describe. It was trust, respect, and a shared commitment to the unknown future. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if witnessing the bond that had formed. The air was still, but charged with energy, the quiet excitement of beginnings and the weight of centuries of memory. Carried into a new journey, they climbed aboard the vessel, moving with ease and focus. Fallon adapted quickly to the human technology, guided by his deep understanding of star paths and navigation. Miran handled the controls with confidence, knowing that they were partners in every sense. As the engines roared to life, the ground beneath them began to blur. The ruins of Ornan, the archives, the memories of a lost civilization, they receded behind them, preserved in the chamber of crystal orbs. And ahead lay the endless stretch of space, filled with stars waiting to be explored, mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and adventures waiting to be shared. During the first hours of flight, silence fell between them, but it was not empty. It was filled with understanding. They were both thinking, planning, learning from the quiet presence of the other. Each moment of trust, each shared memory, each lesson learned had led them to this point. Finally, Miran spoke, his voice soft but full of hope. Do you think we can find others like your people? Or maybe discover civilizations that have never been touched by outsiders? Thalen's dark eyes studied the stars ahead. Perhaps, perhaps not. The universe is vast, but I do know this: we will face it together, and together we will honor what we carry within us: knowledge, respect, and trust. Miran nodded, smiling. Then let's go see it all. There's so much waiting for us. Thalen's expression softened. Yes, human, let us go. And remember, what we have learned is not only for ourselves, it is for others, for those who will come after us, seeking knowledge and understanding. We are its guides now. The stars stretched before them, endless and brilliant. The journey had begun not only to explore space, but to explore the bonds that connected them, the lessons that spanned centuries, and the trust that had grown between two very different beings. As the vessel leapt into the void, Miran glanced at Thalen. I am glad we met. Thalen's eyes reflected the starlight, as am I. Perhaps no human has ever touched me like this before, he said quietly. A rare confession from a being who had guarded centuries of memory. And perhaps, now, no one ever will again. Miran smiled, feeling the warmth of the words. They were more than a confession, they were an acknowledgement of trust, connection, and the beginning of a future neither could have imagined alone. Together, human and alien scholars sailed into the stars, carrying the knowledge of the past, the hope of the future, and the rare bond that had been forged through trust, courage, and understanding. The universe awaited, vast and full of wonder. And for the first time, Miran and Thalen faced it not as teacher and student, not as human and alien, but as partners equal in respect, equal in trust, and united in the journey ahead. And so, the story of Ornan's last guardian and the human who dared to touch his life became not only a tale of knowledge preserved, but a testament to the power of trust, connection, and the extraordinary strength found when two beings meet, truly see each other, and step forward together. The storm clouds of Veor rolled endlessly beneath the broken platforms, their rumble echoing through the night. Lyra sat on the edge of an old bridge, her arms wrapped around her knees. She had grown thinner after days of surviving on scraps, her strength fading. Yet her eyes still searched the skies, hoping for something. Even if she did not know what. Far above, a human vessel drifted quietly in the upper atmosphere. It was a research ship named Aurora, small compared to the war cruisers humans sometimes built, but strong enough to cross alien skies. Inside, explorers studied the ruins of old civilizations, gathering knowledge and samples. For the crew, Veora was only another stop on their long journey. But for one human on board, this world was about to change everything. His name was Daniel. He was not the leader of the crew, only an explorer assigned to survey the abandoned platforms. He liked to walk among ruins, searching for signs of stories long forgotten. On this day, his scanner had detected faint life signals where no one was expected to be. At first, the crew thought it was a broken reading, but Daniel volunteered to check. Something inside him told him not to ignore it. He landed on the empty platform in a small shuttle, stepping out with his pack and scanner. The air was cold, carrying the scent of old metal and dust. He walked carefully, his boots echoing on the cracked floor. The structures around him were tall and silent, their crystal lights long dead. He followed the faint signal until he reached the broken bridge where Lyra sat. From a distance, Daniel saw her small figure. She looked fragile, her thin arms hugging herself as if the wind might carry her away. For a moment, he thought she was a statue left behind. But then she turned her head, and her eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. Lyra froze when she noticed the stranger. His shape was unlike her people. His body was covered in a strange suit, and his face was hidden behind a visor. She had been told stories of humans before, stories that painted them as dangerous, greedy, and cold. Her people had warned that humans only cared for themselves. Fear gripped her heart, and she scrambled backward across the bridge. Daniel raised his hands, slowly, showing he meant no harm. His voice came through the translator at his waist. soft and calm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "You are safe." Lyra did not believe him. She shook her head, whispering in her own language that he should leave. But her voice was weak and her movements unsteady. Hunger had drained her strength, and the effort of running was too much. She stumbled and fell against the cold stone. Daniel hurried forward, but he stopped a few steps away, giving her space. He knelt down and opened his pack from inside. He pulled a small packet of food and a flask of water, gently. He placed them on the ground between them and then stepped back. He knew trust could not be forced. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She stared at the objects. Her body screamed with hunger, yet her mind whispered warnings. What if it was a trick? What if the food was poisoned? She looked at him again. His posture was calm, not threatening. He waited patiently, not moving closer. At last, her stomach won the battle. With trembling hands, she reached out and grabbed the packet. She tore it open and tasted the soft bread. Inside, the flavor was strange but warm, filling her mouth with strength she had not felt in days. She drank from the flask, water spilling down her chin, but she did not care. For the first time since her family left, she felt her body grow alive again. Daniel watched silently, relief in his eyes. He could see the sharp bones of her shoulders, the weakness in her frame. Whoever she was, she had been left alone for too long. When she finished, he spoke again. "My name is Daniel," he said slowly, pointing to himself. Daniel. Lyra frowned, not understanding at first, but then she realized he was giving her his name. She hesitated before whispering, "Lyra." Daniel smiled. The translator did not recognize her language fully, but her name came through clear. He repeated it carefully, "Lyra." Hearing her name from his voice made her heart stir. It had been so long since anyone said it with kindness. She looked down, unsure of what to feel. The night deepened, and the cold winds grew sharper. Daniel looked around at the broken city. It was no place for a child to stay. He stood and extended his hand toward her, offering to help her up. Lyra stared at it for a long time. The memory of her family leaving her behind cut deep. Could she really trust another being so soon? What if he decided she was a burden? Her chest tightened, fear battling with hope. Slowly, carefully, she placed her small hand in his. His grip was steady, firm but gentle, lifting her to her feet. For the first time since the abandonment, she did not feel completely alone. Daniel led her back toward his shuttle, walking slowly so she could keep up. At times, she looked over her shoulder, expecting to see shadows of her family returning for her. But there was only silence. She lowered her eyes, focusing on Daniel's steady steps ahead of her. When they reached the shuttle, Lyra hesitated again. The strange metal walls and glowing lights frightened her. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Daniel noticed her fear and spoke softly, "You do not have to be afraid. You will be safe here." His voice carried no force, only patience. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped inside. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around her, chasing away the cold. She sat in the corner, hugging her satchel, watching Daniel carefully. He prepared another meal for her, setting it gently on the table. She ate slowly this time, her eyes never leaving him. Though doubt still rested in her heart, something inside her began to shift. This human had not abandoned her. He had found her when no one else cared. As the shuttle lifted into the sky, Lyra looked out the window. The ruins of her old home grew smaller below, fading into darkness. She felt a sting of sorrow, but also a spark of something new. For the first time, there was a path ahead she had never imagined, and sitting across from her, Daniel studied her with quiet thought. He did not yet know her story, but he knew one thing for certain. He could not leave her behind. The human shuttle carried Lyra across the dark skies of Veora. The silver moon still hung above, but from the window, she no longer saw the empty ruins of her abandoned home. Instead, she saw clouds stretching like oceans beneath her. The hum of the engines filled the small cabin, steady and calm, unlike the storms that raged below. Daniel sat at the front, guiding the shuttle toward his main ship, the Aurora. Every few moments, He glanced over his shoulder to check on the girl. Lyra sat pressed into the corner, her arms wrapped around her satchel. Her eyes followed his every movement, filled with a mixture of fear and suspicion. She did not speak. She did not relax. Her people had told her humans were selfish, and her heart had been broken once already by her own family. How could she trust the stranger? He had given her food, yes, but what if he only planned to use her for something and then throw her away? Daniel understood the silence. He did not push her to talk. Instead, he kept his voice calm whenever he spoke, letting her know what he was doing. "We will reach my ship soon," he said gently. "You will meet others, but they are kind. No one will harm you." Lyra turned her face to the window, pretending not to hear, but his words sank quietly into her thoughts. When the shuttle landed inside the hangar of the Aurora, Lyra's eyes widened. The ship was huge compared to anything she had seen. Bright lights glowed on the walls, and machines hummed softly. A few human crew members walked forward to meet Daniel, their voices warm with curiosity. "Who's this?" one asked. Daniel raised a hand to calm their questions. "Her name is Lyra," he said simply. "I found her on the old platform. She was alone." The crew looked at her with surprise, but none showed anger. Instead, one woman bent down slightly and offered a gentle smile. "Hello, Lyra." But Lyra shrank back, clutching her satchel tighter. She did not return the greeting. She pressed closer to Daniel, even though she still did not fully trust him either. The presence of so many humans at once was overwhelming. Daniel noticed and quickly guided her away. "Give her time," he told the others. They nodded, respecting his request. He led Lyra to a small cabin meant for guests. It had a soft bed, clean water, and simple furniture. For Lyra, it looked more comfortable than anything she had known. Yet she did not sit on the bed. She chose the floor in the corner, keeping her satchel close. Daniel set a tray of food nearby. "Eat when you want," he said. "No one will take it from you." Again, he left her space. He knew trust could not grow in a single night. The days that followed were filled with quiet tension. Daniel checked on her often, bringing food and water. At times, he tried small conversations, pointing at objects and naming them in his language. "Book," he said once, showing her a small screen filled with words. Lyra listened but rarely repeated the sounds. She feared opening herself too much. Every time she began to relax, the memory of her family's faces returned. They had smiled at her once too, before leaving her behind. Could this human do the same? At night, she whispered to her crystal shard, holding it tightly. "Do not let me be fooled again," she murmured. Daniel noticed her caution, but he did not lose patience. Instead of forcing trust, he offered simple acts of kindness. He showed her how to press a button to turn the cabin light on and off. He taught her how to pour water from the dispenser, slowly. These small lessons gave her a sense of control in this strange place. One evening, Daniel found her sitting by the window of the cabin, staring at the stars. He approached carefully and sat a short distance away. "They are beautiful," he said softly, pointing at the endless sky. Lyra glanced at him but did not answer. Still, she did not move away this time. For Daniel, it was a sign. The first real test came a week later. Daniel invited her to join him in the main hall where the crew ate meals together. At first, she refused, shaking her head sharply. But when he promised she could sit near him and leave any time, she agreed. The hall was bright and filled with voices. Humans laughed, shared food, and spoke in words she could not fully understand. Lyra kept her head low, avoiding their eyes. Daniel placed a small plate in front of her, showing her how to use the utensils. She copied him awkwardly, dropping the fork once, which made her flush with shame. Some of the crew smiled kindly, but one man, curious, leaned forward. "Why is she here?" he asked Daniel in a whisper that Lyra could still hear. "She is not human." The words struck Lyra's heart. Her stomach tightened. This was it. She would be called a burden again. Her hands trembled as she set down the fork. She expected Daniel to agree, to admit she was not meant to stay. But Daniel's answer was firm. Because she needs help. Because no one deserves to be left behind. The hall grew quiet for a moment. Lyra's eyes widened. She stared at him, trying to understand. He had defended her, not rejected her. That night, when she returned to her cabin, she touched the crystal shard in her satchel. For the first time, she whispered not only to the shard, but to herself, maybe this time is different. Life on the Aurora slowly began to change for Lyra. The ship, once strange and frightening, now felt less like a cage and more like a place where she could breathe. The humans who worked there treated her with patience, and Daniel never stopped, guiding her gently, step by step. She found herself learning new things and feeling something she had not felt in a long time. Belonging died at first. Her world had been small. She only stayed in her cabin, moving between the bed, the window, and the corner where she kept her satchel. But Daniel encouraged her to take small steps outside. You do not have to rush, he always told her. One step each day is enough, and so she tried. She began by walking down the hallway outside her cabin. The lights hummed softly above, and the sound of the ship's engines echoed through the walls. At first, every noise made her tense, but Daniel walked beside her, speaking calmly. Soon, she was able to walk further, exploring the nearby rooms. The other crew members learned not to crowd her. They offered small greetings, but they let her come closer at her own pace. One day, Daniel brought her to the observation deck. The wide glass window showed endless stars, shining like silver dust across the black sky. Lyra gasped softly. She had never seen space from this view. Her world before had been only the floating cities and the storms below. Now she saw countless lights, stretching beyond her imagination. They are far, Daniel said gently, pointing at the stars. But each one is a sun. Some may even have worlds like yours. Lyra pressed her hands against the glass, her eyes wide. For the first time, she felt small, not because she was weak, but because the universe was so large and full of wonders. She whispered a word in her own language, one that meant both fear and beauty. Daniel did not understand the word, but he understood the feeling in her voice. As the days turned into weeks, Lyra began to join Daniel during simple tasks. At first, it was cleaning small tools. Then it was carrying light boxes. She was not strong, but she worked carefully, and Daniel praised her efforts. Well done, he would say with a smile. The words lit a quiet fire inside her, warming a place that had been cold since her family abandoned her. One afternoon, Daniel found her sitting near a control panel, watching the crew work. She leaned forward curiously as they pressed glowing buttons and spoke into headsets. Would you like to learn? He asked her. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. Daniel showed her how to press a simple command to open and close a small door. She copied his movements, her hands shaky at first, when the door obeyed her command. Her eyes widened with surprise. A soft laugh escaped her lips, a sound Daniel had not heard from her before. You see, he said warmly, you are not useless. You can learn. The word useless struck her heart, for it was the word her family had often spoken. But hearing Daniel say the opposite filled her with strength. She nodded slowly, her lips curving into a small smile. Language also began to build a bridge between them. Daniel spoke slowly, repeating words for her to learn. Water, he said, showing her a glass. She repeated, water. He nodded with encouragement. Day by day, her vocabulary grew. In return, she taught him small words from her own language. He often pronounced them incorrectly, which made her cover her mouth to hide her shy laughter. These small lessons became their routine. In the evenings, they sometimes sat in the observation deck, pointing at objects and trading words. It was not just language they shared, it was trust. For every new word she learned, Lyra felt closer to him, as though they were building a secret path only they could walk together. The crew also began to see changes in her. The same girl who once sat silent in corners now helped carry supplies, and sometimes even joined them at meals. She still kept close to Daniel, but her eyes no longer held only fear. They held curiosity, a quiet spark of life returning. One night, when the ship rested in calm orbit, Daniel walked Lyra to the training area. It was a wide room where crew members exercised to stay strong. He handed her a small tool. No heavier than a stick. It is not a weapon. He explained. It is only practice. You should learn how to move, how to defend yourself. Lyra hesitated. The idea of fighting frightened her, but Daniel showed her slow, gentle movements. Step forward, lift, step back. She copied him clumsily, nearly dropping the stick. But he only smiled. Good, you are learning. For the first time, Lyra felt she was not just surviving. She was growing still. The shadows of her past had not fully faded. Sometimes, in the quiet of night, she woke from dreams where her family's voices called her weak. The memory of being left behind still clung to her. But when she opened her eyes, she often found the aurora's steady lights and the sound of Daniel's voice nearby. It is all right, he would say if he saw her troubled. You are safe now. It was in one of those quiet nights that Lyra spoke words she had been holding inside. Sitting by the window, she looked at Daniel and whispered, "Why did you not leave me?" Daniel paused. The question carried the weight of her pain. He sat beside her, his gaze calm. "Because no one deserves to be left alone," he said softly. "And because I believe you are more than what they saw." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she did not hide them this time. Slowly, she leaned against him, her small frame trembling. For a moment, she allowed herself to rest against someone else, to trust that he would not let her fall. From then on, the bond between them grew stronger. Lyra no longer saw Daniel only as a rescuer. She saw him as someone who believed in her when no one else did. In return, Daniel began to see her not just as a child who needed protection, but as a soul with strength waiting to rise. Together, they shared laughter, lessons, and quiet moments beneath the stars. For the first time in her life, Lyra was not a burden. She was part of something greater. She was part of a family not by blood, but by choice. The aurora drifted in calm orbit above Veora, its silver hull glowing softly under the light of the two moons. Inside the ship, the crew worked as usual, studying ruins, gathering data, and preparing reports. For Daniel and Lyra, life had begun to settle into a rhythm. Each day brought new lessons, new words, and small victories that built her confidence. But peace never lasts forever. Beyond the silence of space, Lyra's people had not forgotten their journey. Their floating cities had settled into new skies far away, and whispers spread quickly among them. Word reached the leaders that a human vessel had been seen sheltering a young one from their kind. To the Varans, this was shameful. They believed weakness should be cut away, not carried forward. To them, Lyra was not a child worth saving. She was a reminder of failure. The trouble began when the aurora's sensors picked up a group of ships entering the region. Daniel and the crew gathered in the control room, watching the screens as signals appeared. The ships were not human. Their shapes were long and sharp, glowing with the same crystal energy Daniel had seen in the ruins. Veoran Patrol, one of the crew members reported. They're broadcasting a message. Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at Lyra, who stood quietly near the door. Her eyes widened as she recognized the shapes of the vessels. She stepped back, clutching her satchel tightly. Fear filled her face. The message came through, the translator turning the alien words into human speech. A deep voice echoed through the speakers. "Human vessel, you carry one who does not belong to you. Return the child at once. She is ours to decide. Do not interfere." The room grew heavy with silence. Lyra's hands shook. She whispered in her own language, words filled with dread, though the translator did not catch them. Daniel understood their meaning from her trembling voice. They had found her. Daniel turned to the crew. "We're not giving her up," he said firmly. One officer frowned. "But if we refuse, they may attack. Their ships outnumber ours." Daniel's gaze hardened. "We cannot send her back to people who abandoned her. She deserves better." The Veoran patrol circled closer, their ships shining like sharp blades. Against the darkness, another message followed. "Return her, or we will take her by force. She is a burden, not fit to live among others. Humans do not understand our ways. Lyra's chest rose and fell quickly. She wanted to hide, to curl into the corner and disappear. Every word from the patrol reminded her of the rejection she had lived through. Her people still saw her as nothing, even now. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back, clutching her satchel as if it could protect her. Daniel knelt beside her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Listen to me, Lyra. You are not a burden. Not to me. Not to anyone here. They are wrong. Her lips trembled. They will come, she whispered. Then let them come. Daniel answered softly but firmly. We will stand with you. The tension spread through the ship like fire. The crew began preparing defenses. Shields rose, weapons charged, though the Aurora was not built for heavy battles. Still, Daniel knew they had no choice but to be ready. Lyra watched the humans move with unity. No one called her weak. No one told her to hide. Instead, they worked together to protect her. It was something she had never seen before. As the patrol ships drew closer, Daniel opened a channel to speak. She stays with us, he said. She chose to live with us, and we chose to protect her. We will not hand her over. The reply came swift and sharp. Then you have chosen conflict. The Vaoran ships spread into formation, their crystal weapons glowing. The crew of the Aurora braced for impact. Lyra stood frozen at the edge of the room, torn between fear and guilt. She felt as if the humans were in danger only because of her. Her chest ached, and she whispered, Maybe I should go. Maybe if I return, they will leave you. Daniel turned sharply, his eyes fierce. No, Lyra, that is exactly what they want you to believe. But you are not theirs to decide over. You have the right to live freely. You are not a thing they can claim. Lyra's eyes widened. No one had ever spoken of her life as a right before. To her people, she had always been a mistake. But Daniel's words struck deep. Like light piercing through darkness, the first shots fired. The ship shook as energy blasts hit the shields. Lights flickered, alarms rang, and the crew worked quickly to stabilize systems. Lyra covered her ears at the sound, her body trembling. She wanted to run, but she forced herself to stay. She looked at Daniel, who stood tall at the controls, giving orders with calm strength. Hold the shields, he commanded. Return. Fire only if they breach. The humans fought not with hatred, but with determination. They were not trying to destroy, only to protect. This difference struck Lyra deeply. Her people had abandoned her without hesitation, but these humans were willing to risk themselves for her. As the battle stretched on, the Aurora held firm. The shields glowed under the heavy fire, but they did not break. Daniel sent a final message to the patrol. Leave now, he said. She is no burden. She is with us. If you attack again, you will only prove your cruelty. The patrol ships hesitated. Perhaps they had expected the humans to surrender quickly. Perhaps they feared losing more than they could gain. After long silence, the ships turned and pulled back into the distance, leaving the Aurora in peace. When the danger passed, the crew let out sighs of relief. Lyra, however, sank to the floor, her heart pounding. She felt both fear and awe. Never had anyone stood up for her like this. Never had anyone chosen her over safety. Daniel knelt beside her once again. You see, he said softly, you are worth fighting for. Her tears finally fell, but they were not only of fear. For the first time, they carried gratitude. She whispered his name, her voice breaking, Daniel, and in that moment, a spark of courage grew in her heart. She was no longer only the girl abandoned by her people. She was Lyra, and she had a place among those who believed in her. The Aurora floated in the quiet of space after the Vaoran patrol had withdrawn. The crew moved through the ship, checking systems, repairing minor damage, and quietly celebrating that no one had been hurt. But for Lyra, the calm felt strange. She sat in a corner of the observation deck, hugging her satchel and staring at the stars. Her chest still thumped with fear and adrenaline. She had never faced danger like that before. Daniel approached quietly, kneeling beside her. Are you all right? He asked softly. Lyra looked at him, her small hands trembling. They came for me, she whispered. They would have taken me. Yes, Daniel said. But you were not alone. You are not alone, Lyra. You have people who will protect you. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment she wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered. Could she really be safe now? Could she really belong anywhere? Daniel placed a hand gently on her shoulder. You are stronger than you think, he said. Even if they believe you are weak, that does not make it true. Lyra studied his face. She had always been told she was a burden, unworthy, and weak. Now, she looked at the human who had saved her, the human who believed in her, and she felt something she had never felt before. Hoped the next day. Daniel called Lyra to the training area. The room was empty except for them, with soft lights and padded floors. He handed her a small training stick, similar to the one she had used weeks before. Today, he said, I want you to try something different. Lyra frowned, holding the stick tightly. Different, yes, Daniel said gently. I want you to stand for yourself, not just for protection, but to show your strength. Even small strength matters. Lyra's stomach twisted. She had never been asked to show herself before. She had been told to hide, to stay small, to avoid notice. Standing up now felt impossible. But she looked into Daniel's eyes and saw no doubt, no impatience, only belief. And for the first time, she nodded. They started slowly. Daniel demonstrated. Small movements, step forward, lift the stick, step back. Lyra followed, awkward and unsure. But with each repetition, her confidence grew. Her body remembered the lessons she had learned, and her fear began to fade. Good. Daniel encouraged. Keep your head up. You are not weak. Her lips curved into a small smile. The words felt strange and wonderful. She repeated them quietly to herself. I am not weak. It was a new idea, one she had never allowed herself to believe. But with Daniel beside her, she tried to own it. Later, the alarm rang across the ship. The Vaoran patrol had returned, approaching from a different angle. Daniel called the crew to action, but this time, Lyra did not hide. She stood beside him in the control room, watching the approaching ships. They are back, she whispered, her voice small but steady. Yes, Daniel replied, but this time, you will see something important. He gestured to the controls. You will help if you want. You can do small tasks that make a difference. Lyra hesitated. Fear surged through her, but she remembered the training and the words Daniel had spoken. She took a deep breath and nodded. I will try, she said. As the Vaoran patrol approached, the crew prepared defenses. Shields rose, engines hummed, and the ship's lights pulsed with energy. Lyra followed Daniel's instructions carefully. She monitored small screens, noted approaching ships, and relayed simple messages to the crew. Her heart pounded, but she did not panic. She realized that even small actions could help protect others. The patrol sent another message. Return the child or face consequences. Lyra's hands trembled as she read it aloud to the crew. Then, she looked at Daniel. He smiled at her, giving a small nod. You are not a burden, he said. Say it aloud. Lyra swallowed, then stood taller than she had ever stood before. I am not a burden, she shouted, her voice clear and strong. The crew froze for a moment, surprised at her courage. Even Daniel felt a spark of pride. The patrol did not expect the voice of the one they sought to be so bold. The Vaoran ships hovered. Unsure, Lyra felt fear still, but it was mixed with determination. She was no longer only a frightened child hiding in corners. She was part of something greater. She had people who believed in her, and she had learned that her own actions, no matter how small, could matter. Hold steady, Daniel instructed. Do not fire unless necessary. Show them we are united and strong. The patrol considered their next move. They had expected compliance, not defiance. Lyra's words had shifted the balance. They began to pull back, unwilling to risk confrontation with humans who showed such courage. When the danger passed, Lyra slumped against Daniel. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were mixed with relief and pride. She had stood for herself. She had found courage she never thought existed. Daniel knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You see what you can do?" he asked gently. She nodded, a small smile forming despite the fear. I can be strong." She whispered. "Yes," he said, "strength comes in many forms. You have it inside you, and you used it today." For the first time, Lyra felt truly proud. She was no longer just the abandoned child from Veora. She was Lyra, the girl who had faced fear and found courage. She was learning that her life had value, that she could protect herself and others, and that she was not a burden to anyone who truly cared. That night, as the aurora sailed silently through the stars, Lyra stood at the observation deck. She pressed her hands against the glass and looked at the countless lights beyond. The universe seemed less frightening now. She had faced fear and found strength. She had stood tall in the presence of danger. Daniel joined her, standing quietly at her side. He did not speak, but his presence was comforting. Lyra leaned slightly against him, feeling a warmth she had never known. She whispered softly, I am not alone." "No," Daniel said with a smile. "You are never alone." And for the first time, Lyra believed it. She had been abandoned once, but now she had a place, a protector, in her own courage. She had taken her first real stand, and it had changed everything. The aurora drifted peacefully through the stars, far from the dangers of Veora and the patrol ships that had once sought Lyra. The tension of battle had faded, replaced by a quiet calm. For Lyra, life was different now. She no longer trembled. At every sound, she walked through the corridors with confidence, her head held higher, her steps steadier. Daniel watched her from a distance, smiling quietly. He had seen the transformation in her over the past weeks. The once frightened, abandoned child had grown into someone who could face fear, who could stand for herself, and who had learned to trust. And for him, the joy was not just in her growth, it was in the knowledge that she now had a true chance at life. The day began like any other. Lyra helped the crew prepare samples from a recent planet survey. She carried small containers. Carefully, her hands steady, one of the crew members, a woman named Mara, approached her with a gentle smile. "You are doing well, Lyra," she said. "I am proud of how far you have come." Lyra looked down at her feet, feeling a warmth she had never experienced before. Pride was a new feeling, but it felt good. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel, watching nearby, gave her a small nod. He had always encouraged her, but hearing someone else praise her reinforced the truth she was beginning to believe. She was not a burden. She was capable. She belonged. After the work was done, Daniel led Lyra to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass, glimmering like countless diamonds across the black sky. The vastness of space once made her feel small and powerless. Now, it felt full of possibility. "You see how big the universe is?" Daniel asked. "And yet, you are here, alive, learning, growing. Your life has value." Lyra pressed her hands against the glass. She thought of her family on Veora, the ones who had abandoned her because they could not see her worth. She felt a quiet sorrow, but it was mixed with strength. She no longer needed their approval. She had found something far greater, the belief of someone who truly cared, and the courage inside herself. I never thought I could have a life like this," she whispered. "You can," Daniel said softly. "And you will, because this time you get a second chance over the next days." Lyra learned more than ever before. Daniel introduced her to small tasks that allowed her to feel useful. She learned how to monitor the ship's sensors, helping the crew track planets and detect changes in nearby space. She learned to record notes and observations, contributing to the ship's mission. Each small responsibility filled her with pride. For the first time, she understood what it meant to matter. Her life was not just about survival, it was about participation, contribution, and growth. One evening, as she recorded notes on a newly discovered asteroid, Daniel approached her quietly. "You have done well today," he said. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes shining. I think I am ready for more," she admitted. Daniel smiled. "Good, because I think the universe is ready to see what you can do." A few days later, the Aurora received a message from a distant human colony. They invited the ship to share discoveries and findings from recent surveys. Daniel saw this as an opportunity for Lyra to meet others, to expand her world even further. At first, Lyra hesitated. Meeting so many new humans was daunting. But Daniel held her hand and said, "You have grown so much, you are ready, and remember, you are not alone." Her heart swelled with courage. She nodded, gripping his hand tightly. For the first time, she truly felt ready to face new challenges. When the Aurora arrived at the colony, Lyra stepped onto the platform with steady legs. Humans of all ages looked at her curiously, but she no longer felt fear. She carried herself with quiet confidence, the lesson she had learned and the trust she had gained giving her strength. A small child approached her, holding out a strange glowing object. Lyra knelt, her eyes soft, and smiled. "Hello," she said clearly. The child laughed, and for the first time in her life, Lyra felt completely accepted. She was no longer the girl abandoned for being a burden. She was someone who could inspire, someone who could connect, someone who had a place in the universe. Daniel watched from nearby, pride filling him. She had faced fear, she had learned trust, and now she was embracing life fully. He realized that the true victory was not just in protecting her, it was in helping her find her own strength. Lyra spent the days at the colony learning, exploring, and sharing her experiences. She discovered that the universe was full of opportunities, and she had the power to choose her own path. She began helping with small research tasks, guiding younger explorers, and showing kindness to those who had never known her story. Through every moment, she remembered Daniel's words, that she was not a burden, that she was strong, and that she had a second chance. One quiet evening, Lyra stood on the colony's balcony, watching the moons rise above the horizon. The wind brushed gently against her face, and she felt a sense of peace she had never known. Her past was not forgotten, but it no longer defined her. She had taken control of her life, embraced her own strength, and discovered the warmth of care and trust. Daniel joined her silently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Do you feel it?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I feel hope. I feel that I belong." "And you do," Daniel said, smiling. "You belong, Lyra, not because anyone forced it, but because you are worthy. You are strong. You are alive, and you have a second chance at everything." Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting the light of the moons. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. You did it yourself," Daniel replied. "I only helped you see it, for the first time." Lyra smiled fully, without hesitation. The fear, the loneliness, and the pain of abandonment had not disappeared, but they no longer held power over her. She had embraced life, found courage, and learned the value of her own existence. As the moons rose higher, Lyra and Daniel stood side by side. The stars stretched endlessly, reminding them that the universe was vast, full of possibilities, and full of second chances. Lyra's journey from fear to courage, from abandonment to trust, had reached a turning point. She had been given a second chance, and this time, she would live it fully. The Aurora floated silently in the vastness of space, carrying its crew and Lyra into a future filled with promise. For Lyra, the world was no longer a place of rejection and loneliness. It was a place of opportunity, kindness, and hope. She was no longer just the alien girl abandoned by her family. She was Lyra, the girl who found courage, who stood tall, and who had been given a true second chance at life. And, for the first time, she felt entirely free.